This is a solar panel with battery that I picked up from Amazon. This is a model S2313. It has a USB-C output. It also has DC outputs for 12 volt and 6 volts via some barrel connectors. These are typically used for powering up game cameras or surveillance cameras, outdoor cameras. I picked this up because I wanted to power up my Meshtastic device. This is a Heltec V4 dev board. It has a USB-C input, so it seems pretty easy to just connect that to the USB-C output from this panel setup. This is the controller board that comes in this panel. And if we look over here, we notice that it says it has a USB-C input and a USB-C output. However, if you look at the board, there's only one connector for USB-C. And that's because there's an integrated circuit here that's responsible for switching between an input, which would help charge the batteries, or an output, which would power up the device. By default, when you power up this, this board, it expects an input. It expects that you're sort of charging the batteries via USB-C. So when I deployed this in the field, after a couple of weeks, what happened is my Heltec device was going up and down, losing power and coming back. So I pulled this back from the field, and I think I figured out what's going on here. So this is the solar input where the solar panel part would connect. I've got that wired up into a little USB connector on my bench supply so that I can give it 5 volts, which would be full sunlight from a panel. And then my bench supply is set at 4.08 volts, and I've got that wired in here to simulate batteries, right? So this is the battery input. So right now, this board is nice and happy. This is basically a battery strength indicator. It says, hey, the batteries are basically fully charged, and I'm ready to go. So if I were to connect my output here, I can see that even though I've disconnected the solar input, I still have a nice regulated 5 volts coming out of my USB-C output. And that's because the battery input is at 4.08 volts. And obviously there's a little step-up converter here to bring us to 6 volts and 12 volts and the 5 volts needed for the USB-C. So this little LED is basically my output device, but you can see I'm sitting at a nice 5.1 volts output from the USB-C. So where the problem came in is, let's simulate, we're in the dark here now because my solar input is disconnected. Let's simulate what happens when the device basically depletes the batteries. So as I lower the voltage here, we will see that the board basically shuts down. It's right about here. There we go. And I believe that's like right around 2.7 or so. I get this flashing light on the board, which basically says 0%, you know, your batteries are no good at this point. Okay, so let's see what happens when we get our full sunlight back. You'll notice that my output comes back, but it's only at 4.8 volts. And that's because this really has not switched to an output. The board has sort of been repowered up, and it's expecting this to be an input. Because I have power coming in from the solar panel at 5 volts, it is coming out of the connection, but the integrated circuit has not switched into output mode. It's sitting in input mode, and we'll see what happens there. So 4.8 volts. My Heltec board would come back on when the sun is out. And let's do this. Let's Let's charge up the batteries a little bit. We'll simulate that. That's pretty good. Batteries came up to 4 volts during the day. And then watch what happens here when when the sun goes down. My device will turn off. And again, that's because this board is still stuck in a mode where it's expecting power to come in from this connector to help charge the batteries, because this is the default state where this thing boots up. And you'll never recover from this setup, unfortunately. You can put it under full power, the batteries can come up to full charge, but it's always going to be kind of going up and down with the sun, unfortunately. The only way to solve this is you actually have to physically disconnect this connector. At that point, once you get a sort of power up and power down from a sun perspective, now you can see that the board boots up again properly, and we can reconnect our output, and we can lose solar power. The board stays up. We can restore power, and we're back to our 5 volts regulated. So unfortunately for my use case and kind of the design of this board here, if you do deplete the batteries for this panel system, even though you get solar power back and you recharge the batteries, you'll never really recover from this. You'll always have this issue.